Absorbing information and actually learning it are not the same thing. You know already what I'm talking about. Students who nod along passively, say they get it, but then demonstrate later they don't. The missing piece isn't always content, it's teaching our students to think deliberately about their thinking and take ownership of their learning. Today we'll talk about reflective learning and how we can encourage it among our students. Hello everyone, I'm Professor Stokes Schwartz, and welcome back to the Collaborative Cafe. Okay, you've just wrapped up a class. Students seemed to understand. A few might have even said, "Got it." But then a few days later, you open up the homework in the online submission folder of the LMS, and it's clear they didn't get it. You've seen this. We all have. Here's what's actually happening. Most students can absorb information and parrot it back without too much trouble. But absorbing information isn't learning it. I heard it, and I actually understand it are not the same thing. And that gap is what we're digging into today. We're talking about reflective learning, the practice of deliberately thinking about your own thinking. Reflective learning is not passive review or rereading notes. It's when a learner pauses after an experience and asks something like these three questions. What happened? What did I notice? And what does that mean for me moving forward? The practice goes back to the work of John Dewey in the early 1900s, who posited that we don't learn from experience alone, we learn from reflecting on it. Experience without reflection is wasted time and mental effort. In the 1980s, Donald Schoen built on Dewey's thinking with his idea of the reflective practitioner. That is, professionals grow by examining their own actions both in the moment and after the fact. Now, you might wonder, isn't that really just critical thinking? Fair question. But unlike critical thinking, which points outward, evaluating arguments and weighing evidence, reflective learning points inward, not by asking, is this claim valid, but rather, what do I actually think and why? Both approaches matter, but when we conflate them, students end up critiquing everything except their own assumptions and related decisions. It's also important to note that reflective learning is not a soft skill or a touchy-feely journaling exercise. Rather, structured reflection changes how deeply students encode information, improving their retention and transfer of it, and most important, their self-regulation. But here's the catch. Most students have never been taught how to reflect, and we can't assume that they'll figure it out on their own. On the contrary, reflection has to be structured, taught consciously, and built into a course, not assumed or tacked on as an afterthought. In practice, that means adding targeted prompts at certain high-value moments. For example, after a particularly demanding assignment, a challenging discussion in class, or my personal favorite, a multifaceted collaborative project with many moving parts, some of which might not go as students expect. Specific prompts like, what assumptions did you bring to the assignment that the evidence challenged? Or maybe, where did your thinking change and what caused that? Are much more effective than vague questions like, what did you learn? That type of scaffolding is what can turn learner experience into genuine understanding. And no, before you ask, it does not require a complete overhaul of your courses either. Small, deliberate prompts placed at key points during the course, or even within a single physical meeting with your students, compound over a semester. So to recap, reflective learning is asking our students to think deliberately about their own thinking. The practice is rooted in the work of John Dewey and Donald Schoen and is distinct from critical thinking. And when it's intentionally taught, reflective learning works. It's one of the most evidence-backed tools available to those of us at the front of college and university classrooms, but one that too often gets lost in the shuffle. Now, reflective learning won't fix everything, of course, but it will help move the needle. Next time, we'll look into the cognitive science behind why reflection works. See you then.